So, welcome to Random Thoughts, episode 68 today. This is my topic, but we get asked this one a lot, and we see it a lot on YouTube and a lot on Instagram. Running surfaces, particularly sand. I feel like we should start with the big one.
So much interesting stuff to unpack. Let's talk about the fact that the injury rates across various surfaces are actually pretty similar. It's just different injuries.
Yep.
Except for sand, where I think it's just worse, full stop.
Yep. And we'll dig into why in a second.
If we're going to talk about sand, if we're going to talk about what sand robs you of, I feel like we should talk about what normal surfaces give you.
Yeah, and what running requires from the surface.
Yep.
And then go backwards from there.
Yep.
Good idea. Yep.
Cool. Do you want to lead off?
Yeah, sure. So when we run, sprinting, long distance, whatever it might be, you want to minimize your contact time on the ground. You want to be elastic and you want to bounce off the ground. That's why we talk about a midfoot strike being so much better than a heel strike, because you spend less time on the ground. There's no braking forces. The joints are soft and you can absorb the energy with the muscles and spring yourself into, particularly the calf, and spring yourself into that next step. As you change surfaces, you get a differing level of rebound and stiffness in the surface to give you back a varying level of elasticity.
And yes. And the why behind that, the reason that's a big deal is that we've got this amazing Achilles, we've got these wonderful muscles, and they're designed as springs. And if you use them as springs, it's efficient, it's less work, and it's also in harmony with the design of the body.
Yep.
And the requirements of the sport. Like there's the two things. The design of the body, requirements of the sport. Well, speed is important. And so people will say, yeah, that's great. But I think it's really badass training on the beach, running with a parachute. It's always my go-to example. And it's softer, so therefore it's safer. And I think that's the people are like, what do you mean? But it's softer, you can't hurt yourself. It's like, it's not how it works.
Different kind of hurt. It goes a little bit easy. It's a little bit further than just soft versus hard. So if you're, say, a basketball or a netball or a volleyballer and you're on a sprung hardwood surface, moving from that to, say, concrete is going to be a step up in hardness and stiffness of the surface. So you're going to be getting more jarring forces on the joint.
It's a terrible idea.
And it's a specific thing. So if you're a footballer, you'll be well adapted to running on grass. If you're a soccer player, you'll be very well adapted to running on grass, running in softer surfaces like that. But if you're a basketball or a netball, you're going to be better on those sprung floorboards. So if you change from that, the tendons and the muscles and the joints have adapted specifically to the level of friction. So it's like your volume load of running is specific to the surface. And
so the worst thing you can do, if you're a basketballer who's used to running 16 meters rapidly, the worst thing you can do is run 5,000 meters slowly. If you've been running 16 meters rapidly, using your Achilles, hopefully, springing with a nice technique.
An acceleration type mechanics.
And then trudging 5,000 meters slowly on concrete. It doesn't get dumber than that. I think that is the pinnacle. Because you will create proper knee problems.
Knee problems, Achilles problems, tendon problems, a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. Maybe we're going to do a tip for those of you at home with Do Not Disturb. Only works if you put it on.
Okay, where were we? So if you're a basketballer and you're running a hardwood surface with a sprinting acceleration type mechanic, which has got a short contact time, really good knee drive, elastic action, very quick leg action, and then you go and, like I said, trudge your way through a 5K.
And it's really important to talk about. I think it's important to constantly go back to. Don't talk about a 5K because it sounds
so short.
I like the comparison of 16 meters versus 5,000 meters. I think just such the language. Focus you on that.
And so if you're running 5,000 meters, you're going to be spending more time on the ground. You're probably going to be heel striking in a shoe that you don't play in because you're in your runner now, not your basketball or your netball shoe. And so you've completely changed the thing. It's a completely different sport. The level of specificity has now just gone out the window.
Yeah. And you're just going to get sore knees. You're going to get sore knees. You're going to get anterior shin split. You get some sort of tibialis anterior.
Or tib post. Shin split, how I got mine.
Yeah. So that's craziness. And I think that's reasonably self-evident. Like you've moved from the springy surface to the unyielding surface, and you've moved from sprinting to trudging, to shuffling, to a bad jog. That's pretty obvious. But the effect is nasty. I think it's much less obvious the sand thing. So the difference is, the biggest thing that you get from the sand running is, it's not actually preparing you to run the same way that you run in your sport. But B, it's actually putting a lot of undue stress through your hips because your adductors are having to work incredibly hard to stabilize the pelvis because you're actually slopping into the ground every step you take.
Because the ground or the sand is so soft, you spend so much time on contact that the muscles and the tendons have to stretch out a whole bunch more. And because of that extra contact time, your hip has a lot more time to deal with it, as opposed to just bouncing you out through your glute medius and your quads. You have to bounce and absorb, and your groin takes all this extra load, and your lower back and your abdominals take all this extra load stabilizing that pelvis because it's spending so much time on contact.
Because what you've done is you've deactivated the best feature of the human body from a locomotion point of view is the elastic response to the ground. And that's the feature, the stretch shortening cycle.
Yeah.
And so running on sand just deactivates that. So it's appropriate for surf life-saving competitions.
Beach volleyball players?
People that like running on the sand as their sport.
Beach soccer is a sport.
Is it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So all those sports, keep doing it. But everyone else, and some people and very educated, intelligent people make the case of, well, it's just a different stimulus. It's not harmful, and it's like, it's maybe, the thing is, to me, it's just a terrible value thing to choose because maybe you'll get away with it.
Yeah.
But
you might not break.
That's because it's not, and the people are like, but it's working your heart. It's harder. And the thing is, you might not break, and it's harder work. Therefore, it's better. But you could just work harder on an appropriate surface,
and take away all that risk,
and get the benefit of
elasticity and reactivity and plyometric effects as well.
And fitness, you can get fitness and speed at the same time, minus injuries, which seems like a gazillion times better. So despite however many times we talk about this, people will still say, but like mud running's okay. It's like, no, the yielding surface is not what you want. However, I think that's the really good example of a bad idea. A good idea, running on grass can be really positive.
Yeah, because it's kind of a continuum of surfaces. So you've got sand, which is ridiculously soft, and then you've got maybe concrete, which may be ridiculously hard for team sport athletes. If you're a hardwood athlete, spending some time running on grass is probably a really good idea. Yeah,
it's grass offers enough. I think it has to be short grass. It has to be a good surface.
Good firm surface, underneath.
I think grass is wonderful because it offers you enough feedback that you can feel when you're not running nicely. Like you can sense that wasn't a good ground strike.
It still feels heavy when it is heavy, and you still feel light when it is light.
It's uniform enough that you can run fast on it, but it has that cushioning in it that it's not as high impact. So running on grass is. If you gave me a choice, you said you can run on an athletics track. You can have all your people run on an athletics track or a beautifully manicured lawn. I would go the manicured grass every time.
So you just mentioned athletics tracks. What's the problem with athletic tracks and what's it called? The rubber. It's got a name.
It's got a name. All fun.
The name is linked with the show notes.
Oh, it's right here. Oh, I feel like a moron.
What's the surface called in tennis?
Well, that's
clay,
rebound
grass,
ace.
And rebound ace.
You're hoping it's just going to trigger it?
No, I'm just hoping it was similar. It's not.
But anyway, the surface is used on athletics tracks, which can vary.
Proper rubber tracks.
The thing of it, and when you run on it for a little bit, you're like, wow, this feels really nice.
It feels so fast. It's amazing.
Yeah. But it's actually it's in grass deforms under your feet.
Slightly squishes out.
And then you go. So it has a cushioning effect. It's washing away some kinetic energy. But the athletics track actually just pushes, it trampolines, it pushes straight back at you.
So it gives you, instead of dissipating some of those forces like a grass surface would, it actually exaggerates and it increases those forces by bouncing back at you.
Mondo,
there you go. It's called Mondo.
Sorry.
That's good. But yeah, so a Mondo surface or a rebound ace type rubber surface of an athletics track gives you back rebound, which puts enormous stress on your tendons. So if you haven't built into that gradually,
I should be clear. The rebound ace is different. That's very much a tennis thing, and so that's the concrete. That's quite different to the Mondo. Yeah. Right. Yeah, so
it's been a while since I've been on a tennis court.
Same. But that Mondo-like surface, the typical surface that you'll see on a track, it's actually pushing back with more force. So you've increased the stress going into the Achilles in particular.
And the patella tendon too.
Yep.
So you get a lot of tendons get set up if you start doing a heap of track running. So if you're going to build into track running, which is appropriate if you're a track athlete, or if you need to get the volume into your legs, but you want to do it gradually and slowly.
And even if you wanted to, for like I'm thinking about doing some later in the year, just because I actually want to run fast. But it'll be something I'll build up really smoothly because I know that I'm really ramping up that.
Because what are you running at the moment?
I'm running on a mixture. So from my house, I run downhill for the first 600 or so meters on concrete, and then I cross over and run past the sort of canal near our place, which is all on fairly broken asphalt, which is nice because it's quite varied.
Even.
So what it means is the first 900 meters, less than first 600, 700 meters of my run, I'm running away. It's not really stressing the Achilles until they're warmed up, and then I cross the road and I'm in the park.
Before you go on, talk about the unevenness and why that's so important.
Okay, yeah. So if you're running with a midfoot strike, I think it actually is important to have a slight change in your foot position on ground strike to not be running exactly the same way. Because if you're running exactly the same way and you've got some biomechanical quirk, like you're not perfectly formed, which most of us have.
Your flexor lucis is a little bit weak on your left side or whatever it might be. Yep.
Then what you're doing is you're sending the same forces into the exact same section of the Achilles in particular. And people talk about,
and also bones too. So
bones,
say you
stress,
the fifth met, for example, you might be hammering on exactly the same insertion point into it.
And so the case for running in minimalist shoes is actually how our body evolved, and I'm 1,000% sold on that case. But to apply how our body evolved onto a uniform surface is inappropriate because our body evolved for uneven terrain. And so it copes with that beautifully. So I run then a fair bit of asphalt, and then some concrete, and then trail. And there's a fair bit of trail, and then a little bit of asphalt, a bit of trail. So it ends up being 50. I think it's probably 50% hard surface, 50% trail. Which is really nice and my body likes. And the trail stuff, then in the section where I actually run grass, because I just like to maintain a bit of grass exposure as well. And that's the nicest part because your calves get to relax because you're midfoot striking, but it's kind of helping absorb. Yeah,
there's a little bit of spring in the surface as well as in the actual Achilles.
So that's how I do it.
Yeah, and I'm mostly on gravel at the moment with mine, mostly by 2 to 4 kilometers a week. Not very exciting stuff. But gravel seems to be that sweet spot for me between asphalt and grass, where it's a little bit softer than proper asphalt and roads and pavement, but not quite as soft as grass in that I don't get soggy on the ground at the moment. So gravel for me at the moment seems to be the sweet spot. And I'll build up to some grass.
Interesting. Gravel's the least favourite part of my run.
I'm quite enjoying it.
I don't like it. I enjoy all three. But if you made them rank it, it would be grass, then concrete, then gravel.
Right.
Yeah. Because I feel like I don't get that nice. I feel like the lack of grip make it change.
Lack of friction.
I can't get that nice like on the concrete. I get a lovely one, but that slightly faster sort of 4:30 pace. I get that really nice bounce off the ground. Yeah. And I don't get that on the gravel.
There you go.
Yeah.
Each their own.
Yeah.
So that's sand.
Yes.
Don't do it.
Sand, crazy talk. Unless your sport is requiring you to run on sand, don't run on sand.
Yep.
Grass is outstanding.
As a deload for athletes who spend their time on a hard court, and also if you play football and rugby, you've got no choice.
And it's like you're doing the tightrope, but with a net. Like you can learn to run better without damaging yourself if you stuff up the steps. I think it's a really good remedial surface to teaching you how to run nicely. Can
I tell a story based on that? So back in 2002, I believe it was, the head track and field coach at Stanford, they're a Nike-sponsored school. They were having athletes do some barefoot running, and the Nike executive came up and was auditing and just saying, "Hey, what shoes do you need? What shoes do you like? What do your athletes want?" And so they're all running barefoot. So why aren't you running in our shoes? You're sponsored by Nike. Wear the shoes. And he said, once a week we run on grass in bare feet to strengthen the muscles of the foot and get the Achilles working. Blah blah blah. And the executive went, "Aha!" And thus was born the Nike Free.
Yeah.
So they invented the Nike Free, and they got it wrong, but that's probably a topic for another time. Yeah. But they invented that as a way of achieving a minimalist style of running or getting that same impact through the force. But that way, the Stanford athletes could continue wearing Nikes, and they could stay happy. So that's
pretty interesting
way that the Stanford team, which is quite a successful athletics program,
Well, I mean, the feet are such a big part of the kinetic chain. Like to get everything else strong and then have weak muscles in the
from
feet.
From the malleoli down, just be nothing.
Which is what so many people are.
Yeah.
Sorry,
and
they were running, I think, on the infield, but also they did some work on golf courses because you get really nice manicured.
Oh, yeah. The golf course are going to hate this, but golf intervals where you sprint par threes, tempo run par fours, and then crew and jog par fives. It's a great workout. You did not hear it here though.
Yeah, you didn't because like you nearly got killed by a flying golf ball. So
yeah, I did.
Knocked
and
out
that was
cold.
when I was playing and actually aware of what was going on. So if you're going to do it, make sure there's no one on the field.
Yeah. To be crystal clear, the official core advantage position is don't run on golf courses.
Unless you've booked the entire thing out and paid like $1,000 for a couple of hours.
I know. Yeah.
So sand terrible, grass great. Hardwood, obviously, if you play a hardwood sport. If you're a footballer or a soccer player, I would be avoiding it.
Why would you do it?
Because you don't need to go up in intensity.
No. Yeah.
Because it's just going to expose you to your wrist. I'd be staying on the grass.
Do you know, it's not a surface, but I think it ties in nicely. The hill, because I think it goes into the same category as... and so hills can be used absolutely brilliantly, but most of the time they're used...
Terribly.
Because hill running is speed work in disguise, is a common phrase used. And it's like, yeah, but why not just do speed work?
Yeah, it's like slow speed work.
It's character building and like there's a gut running component to it. So I think the standard
and
approach...
your quads burn.
But the problem with it is, again, you're changing the kinematics of what you're doing, and it puts a lot of extra stress on your tib posts, on your Achilles.
Groins again. Because when you climb, you kind of dig into the ground. There's a lot more contact time. And that means, again, hip stability like we talked about before. But also because you're now reaching up a lot higher with each step, like you're literally reaching up steps. It's going to stretch out that groin adductor magnus and hamstrings and load up your groin pretty nasty.
Yeah, I think so. Hill running, I rarely think there's a good cause for that, except for people that have to run hills. I think slight incline, like really moderate hill can be quite good because you can sort of lean into it, you get a nice shape.
We're talking like 10 degrees type gradient stuff. Because people like look for like 45-degree hills. Like you're basically using your hands. It's like, that's hills.
Yeah, because it's tough. It's it's tasty. Like you can almost not do it. Like one super clever use of hills. My friend and colleague Bowden Babachek uses is if he's got someone doing some form of return to run after knee rehab, for instance, he'll have them do sprints. But the problem with sprints is the sprinting. If you come back from a knee problem, if you've got some sort of anterior knee issue, sprinting is really wonderful and it doesn't hurt a bit. But then you've got to slow down.
Yeah, if you could sprint forever, just go around in a loop.
So your choices are sprint and then like jump into a pool.
Or like a fire pit or something.
Because the deceleration is always the problem. And his thing is using a slight, if you've got a flat area and then some sort of embankment, as they often have around ovals, it'll be sprint and then switch off at the hill and wash off your speed going up the hill.
So you're effectively still running into your slow off as
opposed
to braking hard.
Having to brake.
That's brilliant.
That's genius.
Yeah. So that's how you should use hills.
Yeah.
But the steep stuff...
To wash off the speed.
But the steep stuff, unless you're a cross-country athlete, there's really not much benefit, I don't think.
I mean, you should do... The other thing is, it's one of the things where it's not about all or nothing. For instance, in my own run, I deliberately make sure I've designed my loop to make sure it has the 3 best hills I could find in Yarraville. Yeah. Which aren't very good.
Pretty flat area.
Yeah. But it just means that when I go visit my folks down at Shoreham or whatever, I can actually run. It's not like, I can only run if it's dead.
Oh, sorry. You got hills not coming. Yeah.
Yeah. So, in daily life, it's good to have a little bit of versatility.
Yep.
But I would not program for a team sport steep hills at all. Ever.
Definitely not. I suppose the last surface we want to touch on to wrap everything up is treadmills.
Oh, we saved the best to last.
Yeah, I'm going to write it in the notes and everyone's going to have to stay this long for the video.
Yeah.
Treadmills are a mess.
Treadmills are ridiculous.
Most dangerous piece of equipment in the gym?
Yeah. More people die and are badly injured by treadmills than everything else pretty much put together in a gym.
They can catch fire.
They catch fire. If you've been around long enough, I've seen one catch fire at the old gym, the Body World. it's really common that people will slip over on them and catch a good face burn because basically it's a sanding belt. Like it's just going. I've seen a medicine ball get trapped under one. Someone threw it and it got stuck because it kind of grabbed on and but they're all hilarious.
They're the whole hilarities of the danger. Then there's also the biomechanics and the kinetics and the kinematics.
Let's take one back step. Also, there's a lethal factor, which is really sad. So like Mike Tyson's 5-year-old son died.
Oh, wow.
He got killed by a treadmill in their home gym. So if you have a home treadmill, like lock that up. Like have it, that's community service announcement.
Those videos where people do funny things on treadmills, like put biscuits and then eat. That's dangerous stuff. You rip your teeth off like that.
Don't do that. But putting aside all those negatives. So assuming you're using the treadmill in a safe sense, in terms of occupational health and safety sense, they're still rubbish because in the real world, the ground, you are propelling yourself across the ground using your glutes, and on a treadmill, it's moving, and you are just kind of just stepping on it. And so that's why people will say, "Oh, I'm running 7K in blah 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 minutes," and it's like, is that on the road or on the treadmill? Oh, on the treadmill. It's like you're not really. You put that person out in the real world, they will
die.
Yeah. So great case study. I had an athlete. It's a long time ago. Stud athlete. She was strong as an ox, 6-pack, glutes, crazy good.
Absolute Ferrari. Yep.
Absolute Ferrari. 400-meter runner. But it was winter, and she was running indoors for quite a long time. Fast on the treadmill, but still indoors. And when I assessed her, she had incredible hamstring flexibility, glute activation, core strength. Everything was perfect, except her hip flexors were just off the chart tight, like crazy tight. So it was the Friday. I assessed her on the Friday, and her race was on the Sunday, and I gave her the hip flexor stretch, and she did that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and she dropped 2 seconds off her season PB over 400 on the Sunday. And her teammates and coach were like, "What have you? How did you drop 2? Like, what have you done?" Yeah. And she's like, "Oh, this guy gave me this hip flexor stretch." And so I normally tell that story as a story about why hip flexor stretching is such a big deal. But the flip side of that story is that what had happened is that treadmill running had massively tightened up her hip flexors, and that had locked them up, which meant the glutes were switched off and her stride length was compromised. So that's a great example of the negatives of treadmill running in terms of it locks you up. But on top of that,
because you never really push on a treadmill, you never actually push the ground. All you're doing is just keeping up with it. So it's a series of hip flexor dominant jumping, as opposed to actual propelling and jump and falling into your running.
Yeah, and also it's so there's that negative to it, and the other negative is that it's it has such a high level of absorption
because it's literally spring. Most of them are usually spring loaded.
The good ones are all spring loaded. Yeah, that you're actually going to get a terrible result with that as well, because it's cocooning you from the feedback of your bad technique potentially.
Yeah, so another story, we had an athlete a little more recently who revealed this to us over a series of weeks. I'm not sure whether he was embarrassed or didn't realize the gravity of the situation, but was doing his running and talking about his volume, and we're telling him to back off here and do more here and stuff like that, and working with his running coach.
Finally calibrating the pieces of an elite athletic puzzle.
Guinness go ready for nationals. Like we're looking at Com Games and Olympics in down the track. And he lets us know that he's doing 1 run a week on the treadmill because it's cold. And we're like, okay. And then later on, we then find out he's actually doing 2 long runs on the treadmill. I'm going, does your coach know about this? No. So we rang up the track coach, and the track coach, you had the call.
Yeah, so I got it. And so I called, and he's awesome, detail-oriented, brilliant track coach. And I called him and I said, "Did you know that blah 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 is?" And there was this sharp intake of breath. I was like, "I did not know that."
Because this athlete's in the middle of cross-country season here in Melbourne. Yeah. And he'd assumed that by getting his long runs in on the treadmill, it was the exact same equivalent of kilometres on the road.
So not.
And it's not. It'd be like, what, a third? Half, maybe?
So it's such a difference. And then, so he was like, oh my God, I've made a big mistake. Okay, well, I'll just do my next run.
Back on the road.
And we're like, no.
Because you've dug a treadmill hole for
your
trail running and road running.
Yeah, so you've got to back right off. And it's interesting, last night I said, we trained him last night, and I said, how are you? And he's like, everything is normal. I'm back to, like, he's finally back to where he was.
Would it take a month?
I think more than
Month or 6 weeks. This is
Yeah.
a while ago. Because the first couple of runs, we had to go back right off the volume so that he didn't stir something up and return to the ground, which is what he needs to be running on to prepare him for his sport. His sport isn't the treadmill championships of Victoria. It's the cross-country state championships.
So, yeah, they're no good. So I should say most of them are no good. The curve-shaped ones,
So the Woodway,
the
is one of
Woodway,
the famous one,
and the Techno
Mill?
Gym Skill Mill.
and I think there's a few other ones.
There's a couple of cheap rip-offs now. Yeah.
They've got a curved surface, curved belt, and they're self-propelled, so they don't have a motor.
Yep.
You have to push it to make it run.
Yeah. And so what it actually rewards you for midfoot strike under the center of mass. You can open up your stride beautifully, and you can do intervals on them because it goes up and. The only way to do intervals on a normal treadmill is run and then do that terrifying straddle. Like you have it at full speed, and you sprint and then straddle, sprint, straddle, and if you mess that up a little bit, it's not cool.
Goodbye face. Yeah.
Whereas
the curved ones, you just slow down. It slows down with you. Feels a little weird at first. Takes a session or two to get used to it, but once you're on it, it's
just great.
Pristine.
The other Woodway, interesting. I remember talking to, I think it was Suki Hobson from when she was at Essendon, and they had the other Woodway, which is the Woodway Beast or some tough name like that. And what it was, you'd strap into it, and it was like loaded running.
Right.
But they had discovered a very high correlation between people hurting hamstrings and doing loaded running, because loaded running is kind of like hill running.
Yeah, hill running sort of stuff as well.
Yeah. So the good treadmills are the curvy ones, and I wouldn't let anyone run. Basically, I'd say don't run on any other treadmill. If you're an athlete, if you're a civilian and you only ever want to run on it, and you insist, because there are certain circumstances. Okay, for instance, you can't run early in the morning or late at night in June, July, August in Melbourne because it's too dark, and that's an issue.
A danger thing.
Yeah. So yeah, maybe you've got no choice, but I think if you've got a choice, run in the real world. It's also nicer. Like we're meant to be outdoors. Outdoors feels nice.
What's it called? Biophilia?
Biophilia, yeah.
Biophilia. Enjoyment of outdoors and nature and living things, I think, isn't it?
Something like that.
I don't know. Marnie's thing again. Thanks, Marnie.
That's on Marnie.
We've stuffed it up, though.
All right.
I think that's it, yeah. Cool. So thanks for listening, tuning in, guys, watching, whatever you're getting this on your platform. There'll be a handful of links to some of our running stuff linked below or above in the show notes. That's all I got.
I think that's it. That's good. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Thanks. See ya.